I'm John Street, and you're watching PAX 8 Live.
Welcome to Academy Live. Welcome to Technically Unraveled.
Welcome to the game on PAX 8 Live.
This is James Davis from the PAX 8 Academy again.
Academy Live is really designed to empower MSPs to learn and grow the way that best suits them.
How to grow and mature your business on demand, instructor-led, peer and coaching.
We talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of.
That's when you really need to know, are they security conscious?
Technology businesses and
Inspiring our audience to work on their business.
Understanding what made businesses tick.
I'm really excited to talk about this course.
How can we make an MSP more efficient and make them better at serving their clients?
How do we not screw it up? We do the basics well.
PAX 8 is laser focused on helping our partners grow, get efficient, and reduce risk.
Ask yourself, what are you going to do differently tomorrow to grow your business?
We look forward to seeing you next time. We'll see you then.
Are you guys excited? Are you ready to start beyond?
Who's coming to Beyond 24? You want a little more?
I think folks are really excited about what they can do with their customers and how they can help grow their business.
It's a massive opportunity for all of you.
Cheers to the channel community.
What's up, everyone? Happy Friday, and welcome to the game on PAX 8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. We have a really cool episode coming this week. We have Kyla Guru, the CEO of BitsnBytes, joining us to talk about enabling the next generation of practitioners. So this will be a really cool show. We also have some really interesting news out of ConnectWise and some other places that we're really excited to talk about. A lot of progress happening, and we hope it sticks. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you're going to interact with us in the comments, we'd much prefer you to do it over on YouTube at PAX 8 Cloud, because then we could pull your comment right up on the screen when we discuss it. Makes life much easier and much more interactive for all of us. With that, let's jump into the news.
Whew. I'm tired.
What's up, Matt? Man, it's been a week.
It has been a week. This whole Screen Connect thing, which we are going to get into here in just a minute, has been really just dominant in my mind. I've worked, 12, 16, 20-hour days just looking at this, talking about it, having conversations, and we're going to get to it in the news today. But just to give us a break from it for a sec, Dom, let's start on the why in some of this, right? If you'll kick this article off, Dom, let's get into the news, and we're going to spend the time talking about ConnectWise.
So this speaks to brutality, which we've been talking about a lot. And the headline is cyber attacks on hospitals are likely to increase, putting lives at risk. I want to point that out. Putting lives at risk, experts warn. So cyber experts are warning that hospitals around the country are at risk for attacks, like the one that is crippling operations at a premier Midwestern children's hospital, and that the U.S. government is doing too little to prevent such breaches. Hospitals in recent years have shifted their use of online technology to support everything from telehealth to medical devices to patient records. They're a favorite target for internet thieves who hold systems, data networking hostage for hefty ransoms. We're now moving to triple
I want to stop it
extortion,
real quick, Dom. Hold on.
Point. Yeah.
I love this quote. Unfortunately, the unintended consequence of connecting all this stuff is it expands our attack surface. Are you kidding me? This is blowing my mind. Anyways, I digress. Sorry.
And this one's interesting too. They're saying that soft American adversaries such as Russia, DPRK, and Iran, which is an interesting take. And in November, healthcare chain operated 30 hospitals and 200 health facilities, forced doctors to defer patients. So we don't have to beat this one through the whole article, but this is a serious problem. Like this is the availability of healthcare.
There's a pharmacy down. I think it's in it's a global pharmacy network that's down right now. So this is proliferous, and And everybody says, well, it's healthcare. I think healthcare just has the most path towards human death, right? Like there's just a very easy, direct one-to-one causation, kill chain, pun intended, I suppose, in that regard, right? And so, yeah, sorry. But, look at like what we're going to talk about next, which is the Screen Connect vulnerability. That conversation is how you could stumble into that world, and then it's all about money. And I know you've had certain threat actor groups that have said we will not attack healthcare. They've then said we will because you made us angry. We've had that kind of being back and forth, but I don't think those legitimate protections have played out. And I think that as long as healthcare is paying, and as long as they have problems, which they are just absolutely rife with, then you're going to see the conflation of why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right? Like a conversation playing out. So let's get our next 9 minutes on this next conversation, because this is what everybody's here to chat about right now. ConnectWise Screen Connect 23.9.8.88.11 and now further versions since then. Cloud Partner Summary. Like, cloud partners are remediated against both vulnerabilities reported on February 19th, but on-prem, we're advised to immediately upgrade to the latest version of Screen Connect to remediate against reported vulnerabilities. They actually then go into 23.9.10 and then ultimately some other pieces, and I'm hoping it scrolls up on the screen really quickly here. I do believe it does. As part of this release, ConnectWise has removed license restrictions so that partners no longer under maintenance can upgrade to the latest version of Screen Connect. I just want to let that set in. You can now upgrade even if you do not have a maintenance contract and you are using this license for free, and the reason is why. Let's break into this, and we won't share all the IOC stuff. We don't have to get into it. I would track that live on their page as they update it. But Dom, let's break down what happened first, and then the big news second. So do you want to give an idea of what happened? Like what's the beginning of this, Tom?
This is a classic vulnerability story, right? And it's a chain of vulnerabilities. And I don't remember the CVEs off the top of my head, but there's a chain of vulnerabilities one can use. And in this particular case, it's scored a perfect 10 on the common vulnerability scoring system, or CVSS. Did I nail that? I don't think I've ever nailed that acronym. Anyways,
yeah.
I'm going to take my point. So the idea is that it scored a perfect 10. It doesn't get any higher than that, and it scored a perfect 10 because it allows for a full takeover remotely, chained with an authentication bypass, which means if your Screen Connect server is connected to the internet, it's vulnerable.
And I actually want to focus on the authentication bypass chain, right? It starts with literally a slash. Like, that's all it took to get to the setup page. And that's why this was such a big deal, is once the knowledge was out, the POC was trivial, like literally trivial, like curl space, right? And so you got into this kind of understanding that this created a scenario where if the threat actors determined what they really had, which is access to thousands of machines to hundreds of machines per server, then that situation would play out that they would execute, right, ransomware upon those end machines in that regard. And so what happened was the first thing that ConnectWise did was set out a free license upgrade to fix this path, right, to give you the ability to patch no matter what version, which is awesome. And I don't know if anybody else has done it. Somebody made a comment, wish Fortinet would do that, right? And there's now a Fortinet vulnerability being talked about, right? So they did that. That's the first thing. And I want to commend Beggs and team for Patrick Beggs, CISO, and team for making that decision and helping work through that challenge. But then they did something even cooler. Jason Slagle and I and Tom Lawrence were sitting there on a call after our live stream on Monday, and we said, seems like there's some license revocation capability in this code, and I wonder if there's a way, and it seems they beacon back with version numbers. Is there a way that someone could reject the license, revoke the license, and if so, then when they patch, give them the license back? And that's what they did. And that is exactly what ConnectWise has done, is they have made it to where if you are out there with an old version, and there's like 293 of you that I just showed just a second ago, we can look at that here in a second, but something of that nature, you can go not only upgrade for free, but also your commands won't execute and you won't be able to open up sessions until then, which you're like, dang, they took my license. And the term I like to use for this, and I'll normalize it out there in this conversation, is if Dom and I were sitting at a bar drinking, and Dom got drunk enough that he should not drive home, it is my responsibility as his friend to take his keys from him, right? We universally accept that as okay in society. Then why don't we take license keys from drunk system admins? If someone is not taking care of a 10.0 that has trivial execution, Why do we not take their license keys? And that's what they did. They paused and said, no, you can't do that. But you know what it does? It's already stopped it. A friend of mine that's at an MSP actually has already seen a client that they didn't know had bought from some acquisition they made a key of Screen Connect, and they were hosting it themselves. And they called in and said, hey, for some reason we can't execute commands anymore on Screen Connect. We can't come into our machines. And the answer is your license isn't updated. This MSP didn't even know that client had this. It was just through acquisition after acquisition, right? You see how this plays out. And so they actually then found that it was compromised. And to your point, incident response starts, but they didn't get to execute any commands. It stopped it because they had no license. There's an actual win out there for ConnectWise's decision. And I just, Dom, I can't get any more excited about seeing this in the wild, because it's the marriage and bridge of the challenges of SaaS and OPSEC being easy, because once I know about it, I can patch it, I can WAF it, I can do those things, which ConnectWise did do. Or WAF, web application firewall, WAF, I apologize, WAF, that's the first time we've used it on the show, potentially. But they've WAFed it, right? Or they have that ability to change it in-house, like you saw with Kaseya, those things, and same thing with ConnectWise. The challenge is once I tell Dom and tell the team of Doms out there they need to patch, a clock starts ticking, and the threat actors start trying to figure out what has changed, what's doable, and why is it a 10? And that don't take long when it's just one single front slash, right? And so, you know, you get into this place where it's just an interesting precedent to be set that I think is in the greater good decision. When you make a greater good decision, you shouldn't be punished for it. And I think it's actually played out to save lives. I mean, back to the hospital example potentially, or in this, you know, euphemistic
at least livelihoods. Like, I mean, it's
dang right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's unprecedented, right? We haven't seen this before. And imagine if this became a trend of you didn't patch, so your exposed applications no longer function, right? You have to patch, and it would change a lot, right? And you could apply this to any number of platforms that you wanted to, and it's also super bold. Right, I think that's probably a board conversation of like, hey, we need to shut down a whole bunch of our partners' infrastructures. So it's a really bold and powerful move by them as a business too.
It is, and here's where it becomes not. So imagine you're a car manufacturer, and your car is a auto-driving car. Let's say we call it Schmezla. Let's just make up some fictitious company. And imagine you find a flaw in your code that says this is going to kill people when we're auto driving. We found an actual flaw that is going to murder people at this weird crosswalk type every time, right?
Right.
You want to be able to say, no, you can't drive in those crosswalk types until I fix this. You almost see a precedent being set that then does have a real world corollary, right? I could have a real world situation in this moving vehicle at 80 miles an hour weighing 2,500 pounds with a ton of polymer lithium stuff underneath me. Probably has implications for us in the real world from a software reliability perspective. So you could see this where, no, you can't drive until it's patched. You boot up and then you have to wait. And I think there's an argument for that. I think there's a very valuable argument.
I'd be all for that.
First time I've ever seen anybody do this. Yeah. I've never seen anybody else do this. At least, can you think of a time where somebody's yanked a license over not patching? And they did it in the right way, where if you just simply patch, it just comes back. If you actually do the right thing, you're rewarded for it. It's like pressing the right button on the Pavlovian response, right? I get my license back. You know, it's the breathalyzer for the car. We just put in interlocks at this point, right? Like ultimately. So I digress. But
now we do need to point out, because Jason put out an important point.
Great video.
Just because if your if your license was disabled, there's a high likelihood that you were compromised. If you waited that, because this was not an immediate thing, and maybe it will be in the future, which would be cool, but it probably sat there exposed to the internet long enough, and if your license is currently disabled, it is still vulnerable. It is still there and vulnerable.
Amen.
The attackers are just unable to do that final stage in the kill chain of sending a command. So we should point out that you should assume compromise. You should investigate for IOCs. And Jason's advice, and I think it's
indicators
sound,
of compromise.
after you. Oh, you stole my point. Jason's point, and I think this is sound, is finish your incident response, right?
Yes.
But also just burn the server and start over. Like, I would much rather have to redeploy 10,000 Screen Connect agents than have to remediate 10,000 ransomwares, right?
And the real concern for what you just said, Dom, is the lateralization. right? It's the fact that I've landed with sysadmin capabilities on a box. I now can do LLM&R poisoning if I'm next to you in a domain controller perspective, from a DNS perspective, or any type of resource. I can start doing things against that environment that allow me to expand after I land. And that's the part. And so if your Screen Connect server is sitting somewhere in a network that's running on a virtual private server or a VPS somewhere, and it doesn't matter, it's not tied to your domain, then the ephemerality of that becomes even more. And you can just burn it and start understanding that you're now a known good source from that perspective. And potentially even restore. These are the type of things where you theoretically could restore, down, upgrade, do those type of things where you have some paths. I'm not
Don't forget
summatively.
persistence too. If I persist on that box outside of the context of Screen Connect, and I'm the threat actor, I now have persistence on the box. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna recompromise Screen Connect on the back end as system and do it anyways. So like, I think the point of advice is reimage the entire box and rebuild it from the ground up. Would be my suggestion.
Agreed. I know we're running a little long on this segment, but I want to focus on some data that I have been looking at real quick. If you watched the Black Point stream yesterday, you would see this already. But I have been tracking a data set of 1,000 machines that I pulled from Shodan. Now, the problem with Shodan is, and you've seen a couple people post 7,500 machines online. That's not true. That's only true as of Shodan's data set, as of when they scanned and assimilated this information. It doesn't have a state and time continuance, which means that you then have to check those things. And so what I've done, and Jason Slagle helped me write this. He wrote it. I wouldn't say helped me write it. We conceptualized it. He wrote it. But where we take and we pulled the first 1,000, and I've been tracking that same 1,000 for 4 days now. That same 1,000 has 91 out of 455 alive that have been patched at this point, right? 60 and 31. Those two versions up there, 23.9.8.88.11 and 23.9.10.x that it's on at this point. So my point is, why do I care so much? Why are Dom and I still talking about it? Why are so many practitioners talking about it? Because there's simply 80% of the population that still hasn't patched no matter what has happened yet. And my argument and conversation out to those people is, if you're on version 6, you probably should take advantage of the free upgrade to 28.x and take advantage of their benevolence and protect your people. And I would rip you apart for failing to do this and not having a place where you say CVS 10 takes priority on these systems. These are the systems I have. I know 1.1. I know 7.1. I know my 7.3, 7.4 extensibility and CIS that say here's how I'm going to patch. So you're not doing it. This 1,000 is representative of larger data sets out there. And so even though I'm only 400 or so online, of those 490 something have patched at this point, right? So it's in the high 20s, 23, 24%, whatever, mid 20s or so percent. So anyways, we'll come back to our conversation. And we have an amazing guest. All I really want you to do is stop watching this if you are not patched, and go patch. That's my ask. Right, it is this. Please. But if not, watch this, because this person is this human is amazing. And I am blown away by the impact that she has already had on cybersecurity. And I'd go ahead and say, if you've ever been that kid that to your mom and dad had to be the cool kid that could program the VCR, that's the challenge we face in our world, is that technology in the digital age is really only you and me, Dom. Like, really, I'm older than you, but you know what I mean? That generation and forward. And now you have this generation of your kids and my kids, and Kyla is a representative of that kind of subset. So we're going to go to Robin first, and then we'll bring on our guests.
No, first we're going to go to a video that I believe we forgot about, which does happen live.
It does happen. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. It's going to be me and Tom Lawrence and Jason Slagle's advice on this earlier this week. Thank you.
Essentially, there's a flaw in Screen Connect, which is a remote software tool that allows managed service providers, or actually, colleges, universities, as other places,
all kinds of people, as we've seen, right?
To remote control systems. It's amazingly powerful. It's wonderfully useful in your hands as the IT admin. It's way less fun when threat actors get a hold of it.
And the challenge is very limited right now to, at least at this point, from an exploit potential perspective, to one you host yourself. Right, this is somewhat mitigated in the ones that are cloud hosted by ConnectWise themselves. This is really your patch challenge right now. And Jason, you've been doing some digging on
And
just
the
how
patch is
many
available.
of
I
them.
do want to make that clear at the beginning
Yes,
of the
there
video.
is a patch. It is
Yes.
solvable.
Please
at
watch
least
this.
in
If
this
you
current-
didn't hear
yeah,
that
yeah.
first, stop watching us and go patch if you haven't done
Yeah,
that.
yeah. If you've got one of these servers that's not patched, do that now. We'll talk to you later.
But if you know someone running this, if you're aware of this being used, and even if you're not the admin, say, hey, are we on the latest version? Ask someone up the chain, kind of ask these questions. Send them a link to that Huntress notice. Send them a link to the.
We also at the same time apologize to all you practitioners we just created a total storm from that response. So there's this balance of that challenge. But we're seeing so many of these, right, Slagle? And I think the point is ask your administrator. It's that critical. And here's why. Without saying exactly what it is, very trivially, it can be taken over and full administration capabilities gained with one single essentially set of scripts.
Yeah. So same advice. Please patch. I'm gonna keep the show on the road. Let's talk to Robin about security projects.
So I'm going to offer some advice about how to approach large security projects, large compliance programs, and even making big changes in your life. One of the things that I notice is when something is big, and it's like big, we get so overwhelmed because there's so much that we have to do that we can find ourselves getting lost in the planning phase. We just kind of never come out of that planning black hole. We never get anything done. So here's an approach, and I love this: agile project management. Agile allows you to really approach things iteratively and take some big lists, we'll call the backlog, and pull things off the list and just focus on those things for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, quarter. We call those sprints. You're not going to be trying to eat the elephant in one bite. You're going to pull off, take some, set some targets. And where you will really see this start to compound is if you set quarterly targets and then scope your sprints for the changes you're going to implement. Scope them down 2 weeks, 4 weeks. I don't really recommend 6 weeks. That's too long. But into small bite-sized chunks. And then you get to see progress, so that by the end of the year, you have accomplished so much. You still may have a long way to go, but you will be able to say, oh, our security posture was here when we started, and now we're here. And you just keep rinse, repeat. You will get really good at operationalizing your security initiatives, and it won't overwhelm people, and you get the satisfaction of seeing continuous progress. That's one of ISO's isms: continuous improvement, not perfection, not one and done, continuous improvement. And when you can do that in measured segments, quarterly, breaking those down into sprints, you won't feel overwhelmed. You will feel a sense of accomplishment in seeing what you can accomplish over the course of a year.
All right. That was a good episode.
We're both back. Yeah, that's three
Both
eyes
back.
that can look at you now. Yeah, we're in good shape. So. I digress. All right. Anyways, okay, let's get on with it. We have an amazing guest. If you don't know Kyla Guru, she started BitsnBytes. She started educating early, but why would I tell the story? Let's bring her on to tell her own story. Kyla, come on in and join us. It's great to see you.
Welcome.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Dom. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, where does this video find you in the world today? Where are you at?
Yeah. So I'm actually closer to you all than I am to home. So I'm on the West Coast. I'm in California. I'm currently at college and I go to Stanford, so I'm on campus.
Very nice.
But yeah,
Very
I'm
nice.
super thrilled to be joining you on this side of the country and and having a good time this Friday.
We're super awesome and excited to have you here. It's awesome because I don't know for anybody's backstory. I shaved my beard about a year and a half ago or so, and we raised money for charity. I think we got you a non-zero amount of money that time, and then also brought another non-zero amount of money just recently for Bits and Bytes. And why don't we start with that? Tell me a little bit about like your backstory. How did you get known and you know, living this life that you live today, from public speaking all over the world? But introduce yourself to everybody, please, Kyla.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I can't explain the amount of gratitude I have towards this team and this cause. It's really pushed us forward and personally feel so connected. And this is honestly such a full circle moment. So happy for that. Yeah, much love. And so I guess in terms of the backstory, let me kind of take everyone back to when I was 14 years old, when I was a young, kind of wide-eyed girl, and I was hearing these kinds of terms for the first time that Dom and Matt just talked about, like breach and cyber attack and hackers, and I had absolutely no clue what any of it meant. I just knew that it was really bad, and we had to do something about it. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about what the behind the scenes was around all this terminology. So I looked up on Google like cybersecurity camps near me because it was summer and I just wanted to learn and get out there. So the first result, the one I found, was called Gen Cyber, and it was a summer camp at Purdue University for a week. And it was going to be my first time away from home as a 14-year-old, and I was super excited for it. And it was honestly such a transformative week, I would say. So any young folks who are listening to this, or if you have any young folks in your life, would highly recommend Gen Cyber as an introductory pathway into the cyber field. But essentially, I walked away from the camp with a couple takeaways. One of them was that I was just in awe of the passion of some of the students and professors that I had met. And that really showed me how motivated and mission driven a lot of folks in cyber were, which was really empowering, right? People aren't necessarily driven by fame or fortune or money. It's really this idea that you're helping individual people feel safe and secure and helping them feel empowered to use their technology in the fullest. So that was what's really empowering to me. And then the other thing was this more alarming fact that 95% of cyber attacks are due to human error. And that's when that was what really kind of, yeah. And I'm sure we've all kind of like seen that or felt that as cyber professionals. Like, it can be the most complicated exploit that's built by an advanced persistent threat actor from a different country. But at the end of the day, like, it's just a human who clicks on a link in one email or a document that looks like a Microsoft document that gets them, pawned. So at the end of the day, it really dawned upon me that if it was a human-centered problem, then it would require a human-centered solution. So I set off on this mission in my local community to ask elementary schools in the area what they were doing about cybersecurity and whether there was anything that I could do to kind of help the cause and help them speak about this with students. But at the same time, I was kind of surprised to hear that a lot of the lessons and things that happen to do with cyber really only started in college. Like, they said that, we don't really talk about these at the elementary level. We talk more about maybe digital citizenship.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-oh. We lost her headphones. We lost Dom. Did somebody anger Teapot? Does Stanford University just have an absolutely against Teapot or something? Are they coming back on us? No, we've got you back. To your point, even if then do people learn about some of these basic concepts, right? Like, we still have adults that have been through college, exiting, that you would walk up to right now, Kyla, and go, do you use the same password on everything? And their answer would be, yes, I do. Okay, is that bad? Why? Is that not a good thing? To your point, but continue. So are you back? Can we hear you now? Nope. Okay. So Kyla, you will need to probably just refresh your browser and choose a different audio option. The nature of this won't refresh from that. So we lost Kyla, which is okay. She'll come back here in a second.
But to the point you were getting at,
yeah,
I think we should ask about the. You've ever seen the challenges where they go out in the street and they're like, "Oh, what high school did you go to and what year did you graduate?" And now we know their password, right? Like that's
right.
That's what we're dealing with.
The Jimmy Kimmel, right? That 30-second
yes,
Jimmy
that's
Kimmel.
It. It's a Kimmel skit. Yes. Yeah.
Or even the meme that says, now my password's compromised. Now I've got to change my dog's name, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's so good. Oh, we've got her back. Okay.
She's back.
Continue your story.
Right.
Continue your story.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. We have a joke here that even though we're a top-ranking engineering institution, our Wi-Fi does not fit the par. Like, we have one of the worst Wi-Fi.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm gonna try my best to stick with y'all. But essentially, the ending tale of that story was sort of that made me realize that students in schools were not talking about this issue as much as they probably should be. And even as you all are talking about, as a young child now, you're exposed to iPads and passwords and TV shows and all this possibility, but at the same time, you're not really learning or connecting those more technical concepts of cyber with what you're doing. And so that's how I really set off. And initially, I approached the elementary school and I said, "Hey, let me start a club, a cyber club at the school."
Right? That you were already at, right? Your school?
Yeah, this was my former elementary school. So at the time, I was a freshman in high school, and then it was sort of my right down the block, the street that I grew up on kind of school. So, so then it was a process of really figuring out what would help them the most, because I initially approached them with this club idea, and there was a lot of institutional barriers to getting it off the ground. And they're like, maybe not. And then a couple ideas came and passed, and it was like, I was like, oh, I'll write a storybook, or I'll go in and talk to the kids through a class. And all of those kind of like felt like it just came up to the teachers as a lot at the time. And so finally we landed on one yes that really transformed the Bits and Bytes journey, and that was a 5-minute informational video.
Do you want to call out that yes as to who that was? Who was it?
Yeah, it was my my former, I guess she's now like the principal of the school, which she is. It's amazing, Dr. Faust.
Well, hearts out to you to have some courage and to do something like this. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So she said, okay, let's get together and let's build a 5-minute animated video for the kids, and it'll just talk about the top 5 tips that you have as like Professor Penguin, which was their school mascot, and talk about the cyber tips. So I did that, and I went in and I presented this video, and that's when I saw like students really feeling impacted and moved by the video, and they got so excited at these new concepts that they were learning and finally putting some word to the experiences that they were having. Because it's not that the students like don't experience these things. They definitely do. Like, they have social engineering attempts are kind of in their inbox and in their Instagram DMs. They see these kind of threats, but they don't necessarily learn.
I almost stole Matt's son's Roblox account. Like, I got real close, and then Matt caught it. But.
Exactly. No, I've heard so many stories of games and kids' apps, things like that. So it's exactly that kind of threat that we're dealing with. So yeah, that was honestly the start. And from there, it wasn't only that school. So many schools were like, okay, let's do something, and it kind of became
Did you
this
animate?
effect.
Was that your capability already? You already had some animation skill set for doing that animation as well, or did the teacher bring that, or did you outsource it? How did you build it?
Yeah, I mean, there's this software called Powtoon, and you can build animations by yourself. And so I used that free software. I was on the free version. I did this project essentially like with no money or fundraising. I didn't need anything.
Brain,
and then
right?
Yeah, no, it was really grassroots like that. And then I didn't even realize that it would become something more until I sort of got that interest from the teacher and from other teachers like them. And yeah, it was that domino effect, I think.
Sure. And at that point, you now had to scale it multiple different people, different iterations. Like, I imagine the owl doesn't work. You had to do a squirrel. You had to do, or did you start really actually just making the content, singular content that wasn't as branded for scale? When did that transition happen for you?
Yeah. I realized it was kind of infeasible to cater to every single mascot that schools have. And like, I can't even imagine, like, at Stanford, we have a tree mascot. I can't imagine like a dancing tree talking about passwords, and can't take that seriously. But I think I decided to kind of scale it and just make it into more of a curriculum based content, so that it wasn't just a one-off 5-minute video, but it was more of a guided discussion, and it had worksheets and associated lectures and lessons, and it became more of a built out project. But the video was really the start, because the video became then the basis of all the other lecture videos that was to follow. So yeah.
How many are watching this now? Like, how many are consuming that content now? 5 people, 20 people? How many people are consuming that now? Do you know?
Yeah, so far we've impacted about over 22,000 students across the U.S.
Wow.
and the
That's
world.
one student
So
per dollar I've
amazing.
spent already, or people have spent and donated to you that I've catered that way. That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
and
continue.
this is from 7 years of activities of
So cool.
teaching in classrooms, curriculum being out there in schools, and then also like workshops, speeches, everything that we've done so far that's impacted.
Can we cover some of the types of content in general that are part of this? Because like in my mind, and maybe humor me on this, there's this challenge already of like monetary skills in most high schools and most middle schools, right? Like my son wasn't taught how to balance and deal with debt and deal with things in that nature for the most part. There was a real gap in some of that. Is this a similar nomenclatural gap in even just the tech conversations around passwords and around security and around social engineering and around, like, you feel like you're having to be the base layer for a lot of that? And is that even there yet? Like, what kind of content did you make for some of those challenges? Just literacy.
Yeah, so the content itself is pretty fundamental. So it's teaching students who are assumed to have no background in cybersecurity beforehand. But that with this generation, that's actually not mostly the case. Like, students have seen passwords before. They've heard about hackers. They've heard about different kinds of attacks. Like, some students are very, very savvy to these things, and most students have a basic understanding. So when I'm in classrooms and I'm administering the curriculum, that's where the real fun part is, because students not only see what they've been hearing about and experiencing, what words actually describes that experience, but also then they're able to do an activity around it, talk to their friends about it, and it's more of a like giving them the time and space to really care about it in their life. So yeah, it's really like surprising how savvy some students are, but to be honest, like, it's stuff that we've experienced from the first time that we logged on to school.
And awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Matt's like rushing this show because he's so excited for this conversation. But I understand we have some photos or perhaps some other media like showing how this program works, and I think that's really impactful. So can we pull some of that up and talk about it?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Guide us
so
through
I'm
these
happy to
photos.
I'm happy to guide us through. So this is kind of what a smaller workshop looks like when we're in the classroom with students. Some students, depends on the classroom, some classrooms do have access to tech that the students bring in, or the students will be guided with their teacher. Some classrooms are paper fully. So I can talk about this more, but the fundraising that the team gave us, Matt, really helped with building up our presence in India and helping students in India understand what cyber is.
That's
so
awesome.
happy to go into that. And I think some of the
Yeah,
pictures
please do.
actually are about that. So can dive
This
into
is
that
your
later.
show.
But this
You continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
oh man, I'm taking over. So I think this picture was from Singapore. So these were students who were in the lower income bracket, and we usually do this through partnering with organizations who already work with these students, so they have a rapport with them, and typically even know their parents or have these sort of relationships built in the community. And then we come in and kind of administer this workshop and help host and train the volunteers if necessary. So you can kind of see on the board, we did a little password creation exercise. They created some password about gummy bears. So it's always fun
what
to
the
see
gummy bear conversation was on the board there. Yeah. So
yeah.
And so
Yeah,
you
so
walk them through. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was
gonna
just gonna
say-
describe the silliness, but the idea is to make security as approachable and relatable as possible. So, for example, for passwords, we play word association with the students, and they can come up with a long, strong password that is unlikely to be victim to a common dictionary attack or
Sure.
probably some of the passwords you see on the default passwords. Yeah. Yeah, so this picture is actually from one of our India programs this past winter. So this is what the funding actually directly helped us do is impact. Last year we taught over 180 students, and then this year I think it was even more than that, probably I think double or triple that amount because we went into more classrooms. But this is a classroom in partnership with one of our partners, Project Putri. And what Project Putri does is they work with daughters and students of, again, the lower income bracket, and specifically students who might be, children of single parent household, or students who might be just economically disadvantaged in terms of career opportunities. And then, so in this sense, cyber not only becomes a way to make them feel empowered about their own safety and security, but also maybe becomes a potential career pathway for a lot of them, right? So it's really exciting to walk out of the room and see some of the students kind of be excited to be like a forensic investigator or a police officer. That's or cool. Have that kind of like inspiration behind them that yeah. And again, these students, like regardless of where they come from or their economic background, like they're very savvy about these things just because it's human experience at this point to know that, you might hear from a stranger on Snapchat, or you might see a link that might be suspicious. So it's not, it's definitely common experience with young people is what I'm seeing.
Is that they're starting to understand that those attack vectors exist? Or are you saying that like in general, more young people are starting to be aware of that as a concept of people like that's not really somebody on Snapchat that's a friend that I'm, my age?
Yeah. I think definitely a consciousness around it. I would say they don't necessarily understand the motive behind those kinds of things all the time. So, but like in terms of, but that's things that you would, really only understand if you were in a classroom and you heard about it or understood it that. So, so it's really interesting to see like that they've like a lot of them had stories of their siblings or themselves seeing like offers for like buy one get one free at a restaurant on Facebook, and they were like, oh, I knew that link was kind of fishy, so I told my parents not to click it or give their so it's really cool. It is like a community that they're finally like seeing that it's like actually a concept and it's actually like a career if I wanted it to be.
Sure. How much of that you say like digital forensics, and do you just go over each concept, kind of dig into them a little bit about what a day in the life looks like? What does that content kind of look like, and how you get them understanding those different career paths?
Yeah, so it really depends on the workshop that we're doing. So for these students in India this time around, we did a more social media and social engineering geared workshop because the problems that they face at this age, which is around middle school, is typically in that space. But it really depends. So we'll do topics across like encryption and geopolitics and disinformation. We have one on passwords, social engineering. I think we have one on like what does it mean to be hacked and like selling of data on the dark web. So there's a really interesting kind of mix of activities, and that's the main way that we get students involved is like through activities, through workshop settings. And the activities entail all the way from like for the young kids, we have things like word searches and crossword puzzles, and then we have
that's cool.
We still do sort of animated video style things for younger kids as well. And then we have activities like, for disinformation, we created a like real or fake guessing game. So it's all about making it like as approachable and approachable. And, yeah. Wait, you totally should. You totally should.
I mean, that's so impactful because Matt and I are trying to teach adults all this, and we're struggling.
True story. Yeah, true story. I might just borrow them. There's a comment from MSP Madman that says, Kyla, how does your generation feel about AI? We like to take audience comments. So can you tackle this real quick, Kyla, and just a real quick breakdown? How does your generation feel about AI?
Yeah, I was actually just going to talk a little bit about it. So this person read my mind. Thank you. But I think AI is really transforming the way that we do everything as a generation. And like, I think especially in the academic setting, the AI I think a lot of people jump the gun to assume like, oh, AI is gonna, like stop our creativity or hinder us from, actually learning things. But I actually think that in a lot of ways, the ways that I've discussed with my friends, like it's actually making education a lot more accessible to folks that maybe wouldn't have had that before. And for example, some folks come into Stanford CS classes without having ever taken a high school CS class because it's not offered at their high school. And it's interesting to like see that there are still schools where it's not offered, and that is the case. So in that case, AI and ChatGPT can really be used to help lay some of those foundational knowledge so that these students don't have to feel rushed in office hours or feel overwhelmed by the classwork that obviously these professors are kind of starting off with the assumption that you do have basic knowledge of CS and principles. So in that case,
CS, since you're using an acronym, we haven't gotten, so I'm going to steal a point from you. CS stands for computer science?
Computer science.
Okay, just making sure. All right, we had to use our acronym counter, so I got one extra point on Dom here. Let's come back to some of those pictures, and I want you to talk through maybe that next one that we have here of what was this scenario for y'all. Let's go ahead and go to this next one. Where's this one? Tell me about this this outreach.
Yeah, so this is, again, one of the classrooms that we worked with in the wintertime through Project Putri. Again, one of our key partners there in India, working with students, female students, Project Putri works with who are, again, economically underadvantaged. And these students, we always try and give them a little something to walk away with. And one of our special giveaways is white hats. And if y'all have been following the show and are cyber geeks, you know what a white hat is. And it also helps the students understand the difference between using the skills that we teach them in class for good versus bad versus the gray area. And which is really important to kind of teach that alongside the skills that are critical for being a cyber professional, which is kind of walking in the shoes of the adversary, kind of understanding holes, seeing holes where people might not. So when we teach them those skills at the same time, we say like, okay, this obviously can be used for bad, but that's not something that we're teaching, and that's not what we intend for you to do. There's also a lot of good in the world that can be done with this knowledge, and you can report it responsibly, and this is what you do. So yeah, that's kind of the gist behind the white.
I love this so much because I wish executives would listen to what you just said right now. When it comes to, I have so many professionals that say they're blue team, they can protect, they can defend, but they've never even looked at how to attack. How can you have a knowledge that's able to defend without some of those skill sets to understand how you're going to be punched in the face? It's like saying I'm going to box because I've learned how to hold my hands up, right? Like there's other pieces to this that need to be a part of this understanding. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah, I have a coach on campus for our cyber team, and he always says blue team like red team like blue team. So I feel like that's
I like that.
That's kind of the gist.
That's brilliant. So you brought up computer science, and we'll come back to the pictures here in just a minute. But speaking of this, like international relations, tell me why you're studying that. What is this just an extension of that? Why the international component of that and international relations? It seems like those seem to intertwine with your charity work as well, in your study work. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I didn't quite anticipate going doing those studies because of the international component of Bits and Bytes, but it's been a really nice benefit of that. But I think
the motivation behind it was kind of because I was doing this cyber work, and I realized that a lot of these attacks are coming obviously from other countries that might have different strategies around their use of cyber. And I got really interested in specific questions around like active war and whether cyber was going to be a part of the next generation of warfare, and some of the more like thorny, honestly, legal questions around that.
Yeah.
And so when I was doing this, I realized like security is very interdisciplinary, and people often assume you need like a very deep systems background, and you need IT background, and that's it. That's like, that will be your ticket to cyber. And obviously that could be the case in certain roles, but I feel like honestly learning a more holistic perspective has been really useful and interesting to understand why these threat actors really do what they do and what motivates them at the end of the day. Like, I don't know if y'all have been following the recent headlines around the leak around the Chinese APT groups through the PLA. And that's been really interesting and fascinating, because there's obviously a clear geopolitical perspective and angle that you can take into a lot of these issues. And that has to be factored into our defense from the level of like, even operators of critical infrastructure are thinking about that now, because so many of the attacks that they face are from these other countries and our attempts and things like that. So I wanted to really wrestle with some of those questions, and I think broadening my perspective away from just debugging for hours and hours in my VS Code has been really nice.
That's such a great approach. I mean, it's massive, right? Like you're really like, that's the intelligence side of cybersecurity, especially with the international and state-on-state approach that you're taking. That's 2/3 of what I dealt with in a previous life, and the nerdy bits were like a side job at some points. So that's hugely insightful to be going into that space, and it will bring you into a space where you have a massive advantage because of that understanding you're getting, and you already have, like the way you just ran through all that. It's huge.
I've met 40-year-olds that can't articulate that in that way. The other thing I'll add to that, Dom, is I was speaking in Portland last week, or 2 weeks ago, I think last week, and there was an FBI agent, a field supervisor for the cyber division in Portland, and he comes on and he says, I used to call them bad guys. He said, I used to call these foreign international people bad guys. And he says, I've learned that it's not really that way. He said, they're threat actors. He said, they're not bad guys. He says, they're motivated by the fact that they can't feed their family. They're motivated by the fact that they're going to shoot my kid if I don't do this. They're motivated. And I think, Kyla, you hit the nail on the head that the geopolitical delineations and paradigm delineations in the way we see things are quite limited in how we as U.S. citizens focus on the world, and that often creates blinders for the motivations and the actions that are out there from the rest of the world. So I love that kind of part of.
Well, from that perspective, and this is a very apolitical show. I'm not being politic here, but I was doing my research because it is that year, and one of the people I was researching, first of all, the only person with a cybersecurity comment, which first I thought was cool, but then this person said they are going to bring their enemies to their knees. And for me, that demonstrated an exact lack of understanding of what you just talked about, Kyla, right? Of what is the international landscape behind cybercrime, and also your active war comment. Like, at what point do we generate a kinetic response by bringing our enemies to their knees? And having that understanding is so advantageous in this world.
Yeah, agreed. We got a comment in from somebody that might mean something to you in your life. There, Kyla Guru. Thanks, Kyla. The communities will benefit from what you're doing. You know, I want to tag on that just a minute. Do you feel, and I've run into this in my own life, I describe that I'm on a mission, right? I'm trying to solve a mission. Do you feel mission-centric in what you're doing, whether that be the charity or even your work and what you're trying to do as a student? Are you mission-centric?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think that's what initially set me on this path too, of like, I think cyber is just generally a very mission-centric space. And as I said, like, I've talked to a lot of cyber professionals too who, you know, kind of bluntly say like, this is a thankless job in a sense. Like, people notice you when something goes wrong. And it's like, one of my professors put it in a way, he was like, security is often considered a part of the plumbing instead of a part of the problem. And so that's like, Yeah, and so it's like stuff like that that then you think like, okay, but there are also really deep systemic issues that cause some of these problems to bubble up. And like huge one right now is memory unsafe languages that have been stuck, causing legacy code and insecure infrastructure. Sorry to go around
I'm
for
done
years.
Here.
So
Kyla can take my torch. I'm done. You can just carry this from now forward. There's no need for me to be here anymore.
No, you need all the help we can get.
We do. That's cool.
Yeah, but
let's get back to the pictures. We did have a couple more of those to go through. I just wanted to kind of get into. This is also in that same trip, and then also what's happening here on this next one. Sounds like you're speaking to a lot of people in this next one potentially.
Yeah, this one is actually from our previous trip. So it was from last year's trip, which is actually also kind of related to this because Matt's group, the beard shaving fundraiser actually helped us go to India the first time. So this was that trip that
awesome.
Yeah,
this is where my beard died for you to go on this trip. That's the way we might say it, right?
Yeah, but I'm glad to see it's back. It's back in action.
It is. Yeah. If you give away your beard for good, it grows back 3 times as fast. That's the way it works. So yeah,
there you go. There you go. So
all right.
So this was from that. This was from actually I'm glad we went last year because like this year they've been hit by the floods in India, so we weren't able to go help them. But again, these schools are kind of like they're not as high tech or funded as U.S. schools, so it's like this whole classroom we did with no technology. Like this was done with paper and explaining to the students these concepts. So there's really a range, and I think these trips are really eye-opening because you realize like even within the US there are these disparities, even across the world there are disparities. So yeah, I think you're right about kind of teaching fundamentals of computing alongside the fundamentals of cyber because they really should go hand.
They're non-delineable. Yeah, they're non-delineable. Right. You can't. Yeah, don't get me started on a rant. That's good. We do have one more picture. Let's jump to it, and then we'll come back to a comment from YouTube. Where's this at? Where are you speaking at here?
This was actually a little bit different. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I started seeing how a lot of my female friends were dropping out of our computer science classes, and I would ask them why and get into these conversations, and some of them would say like they want to go into a field. So one of my friends was saying that she wanted to go into fashion and didn't think that learning technology would be relevant to that in the future, and that was kind of alarming or eye-opening for me because I was then imagining all of these ways that technology could be applied within the fashion industry to do so many cool things and
logistics,
and so I had this
design.
Yeah, absolutely. You're seeing so many of those now, like that. There was like that AI dress that woman wore at the Adobe. There's like this fair, and I don't know, the creative aspects of computing are really interesting. So in any case, it was that conversation and many more that then spun off into this conference that we ran, which we thought would go on for 1 year, and that was it, and we would have a fun time. And essentially we realized that people wanted to join our organizing team, and this could actually be something we could do for years on. So this will be our 7th year, and we're an international conference now that helps bring together young women in high school, because we realize that high school and middle school are really the times where you're actually formulating a lot of your confidence and your experiences around technology. So we bring together young women in high school who then interface with companies like Google and IBM and different research labs, and really get them to see the excitement there is in technology. From even we brought in Disney last year, and they did a whole session about like animation and technology and the different software that they use. So the cool part is that now we're growing every year, and we have our virtual event that was born out of the pandemic, and we're also in our 7th year of operation. So we'll be hosting our conference at Google's office this summer in June. So definitely keep track of our girlcon.org website, register details. And forgot to mention this important point that it's free for everyone all the time. So the point was to make GirlCon as accessible for young people as possible. So the entire conference, all the swag, everything is free, which I urge young people to take advantage of, because now that I'm older and I see all these conference fees, I'm like, how is this possible? I'm not used to it. So.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you, we know at Pax8 with those costs. They're not cheap, right? I love that so much. Okay, so let's recap real quick. So I want to recap. We have you started teaching by literally using technology to bring your vision to people directly in a little video, right? That then grew into doing that for a lot of companies and schools, doing that in the United States, doing that internationally, doing all of those things. Then you had, during the middle of that, founded GirlCon to solve a challenge that was a social challenge of sometimes young women not being told, yes, you can be in STEM. Yes, you can still be in fashion and be in technology. Yes, you can still be in technology and not be out of the things you love. So you start that charity, you're 7 years, or at least that conference, you're 7 years into that conference. And I said all of that, which I can get rid of a minute and like really, I mean like that. I said all of that to say, what's next? How do you rise from there? What are the next things? What's next in your mission plan? And you know, just tell the world what's next. And also, while you're looking here, for anybody in the audience, I would love to see you donate. Go to go.cybermattlee.com/BitsnBytes and donate to their charity fundraising page if you can. We'll throw that up later. It'll be in the comments in the chat later. But answer my question. What's next, Kyla?
Yeah, no, that's a big question. I'm wrestling with that too now. But I think the big thing that's next is figuring out how to wrestle with some of these systemic issues that are causing cyber problems. So whether that is this problem of memory unsafe languages, whether that's the problem of general disawareness or unawareness around cyber issues. There's so many things that I feel like they're systemic issues that then come back to like, okay, they require holistic technical, policy, and legal solutions. And there has to be someone to be able to speak all three of those kinds of languages to bring together those efforts. So I hopefully want to try and be one of those people that can sort of bring together these efforts and really put our best foot forward in cyber. And yeah, we'll see what that actually looks like. But you know, life has twists and turns, and I'm excited to see what's next.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show. You know, Dom and I are always a resource if we can help you. And I think you'll find in this community, as you already have, it's a very welcoming community. And to any young people at home, if you want to get in cyber, we'll put our arms around you and we'll all march forward towards this same mission to solve what we know is the demise of our world from the adoption of technology without thinking about security first, right? And I think that's where we all fight in that same mission. So thank you so much for being here, Kyla. I appreciate it. Dom, if you want to close us out.
Kyla, thank you for joining us. This was an incredible show. That's a lot of accomplishments. Can't wait to see what happens next. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope to have you back on again in the future. With that in mind, that is our show. Although in reviewing my mental notes, I think I forgot to pitch Beyond in the beginning, which is a no-no.
Yeah.
So don't forget to sign up for Beyond.
If you haven't signed up for Beyond.
Yeah, pax8beyond.com. The time is running out on the rest of the early bird pricing, as I understand it. So we'd love to see you there. That's our show for the week. Thanks so much for joining us. Like Matt said, don't forget to donate. There's a link down in the description below. You can check out more, see what BitsnBytes is doing, and donate. Next week, we have a really cool show. Tiffany Ricks is coming on. If you don't know her, she's the CEO at Hackware. And I think we're going to do a little bit of threat actory type stuff, but also really dig into some incidents. So it should be a great show. Don't forget to join us next Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.